A dull hum vibrated through the cold metal of the containment cell, a rhythmic pulse that drilled into Captain Jack Calloway's skull like a metronome for his frustration. He sat against the wall, arms draped over his knees, eyes fixed on the reinforced door. There were no windows, no indication of time, only the hum, the sterile white glow of the overhead strips, and the distant wail of someone dying. He wasn't alone. To his left, Mike "Grizzly" O'Connor shifted his bulk, the massive soldier rubbing at the deep bruise along his jaw where a Dominion enforcer had cracked him with a stun baton. Across from him, David "Hawkeye" Hayes remained still, his sniper's eyes half-lidded, waiting, conserving energy. And slumped in the farthest corner, fingers dancing over an unseen interface, was Jesse "Tech" Franklin, a wiry man whose brain never stopped running calculations, even in a cage. The Dominion had taken them after the Battle of Ganymede, Earth's first and disastrous attempt at diplomacy with the intergalactic empire. The official mission had been peace. The reality had been surrender. Humanity had sent representatives to kneel. The Dominion had laughed, butchered the delegation, and plucked Earth's best warriors from the battlefield like trinkets. Jack exhaled slowly, pressing a thumb against the bridge of his nose. "Tech, any progress?" Jesse shook his head, expression tight. "They don't use hard connections. Everything's neural-linked. If I had even 5 minutes with a Dominion interface, maybe I could crack something. But right now, we're flying blind." "Better than flying dead," Grizzly grunted, stretching his legs. "They could have spaced us. Instead, they tossed us in here. That means they want something." As if summoned by his words, the door slid open with a whisper, and a Dominion overseer stepped in, flanked by 2 towering insectoid guards. The overseer's sleek armor gleamed, the sharp ridges along its shoulders shifting as it regarded them. Its voice was a symphony of layered tones, translated through unseen speakers. "Your species is fascinating in its insignificance. Weak, unarmored, lacking natural weapons. And yet, you believe yourselves predators." Jack pushed off the wall, standing to his full height, meeting the overseer's deep-set eyes without flinching. "We don't believe. We know." The overseer made a sound, something between a chuckle and a hiss. "Then prove it." They were marched down sterile corridors, past rows of cells containing creatures Jack had no name for. Some shrank away. Others watched with empty eyes. Then came the arena. The stench of old blood and charred flesh hit first. Then the sheer scale of the Colosseum. Towering walls loomed overhead, filled with Dominion spectators, their grotesque forms draped in shimmering fabrics. The floor was a mixture of shifting sand and metallic plating, designed to disorient. The far gate groaned open. A beast lumbered forward, 9 feet tall, rippling with muscle, its flesh layered in natural armor plates. A Zerthan mauler. Twin mandibles clicked together as it tasted the air. Its claws flexed, each one the length of a combat knife. "Hell of a first fight," Grizzly muttered. Hawkeye's voice was flat. "It's testing us." Jack nodded. The Dominion weren't here for sport. They were studying, waiting to see if humanity would break. The mauler charged. Jack dove left, rolling to his feet just as the beast's clawed strike sent sand and metal shards flying. Grizzly met it head-on, bracing against the impact, using sheer strength to redirect its momentum. Hawkeye had already moved, calculating angles, shifting his stance. No rifle, but his instincts remained lethal. Jesse circled, scanning for weaknesses. Jack caught the flicker of a Dominion scientist in the stands, observing, recording. They expected a brawl. Something brutish. Predictable. They were wrong. Jack barked orders. "Grizzly, keep pressure." Hawkeye, eyes on joints. "Tech, see if that armor overlaps anywhere." The mauler lunged again. This time, they were ready. Grizzly sidestepped at the last moment, slamming a forearm against its exposed flank, sending it stumbling. Hawkeye moved in, striking at the back of its leg where organic plates met soft tissue. The mauler shrieked, reeling, but it wasn't enough. Then Jesse called out. "Base of the skull, ventilation slits. Not armored." Jack didn't hesitate. He sprinted, using Grizzly's broad back as a springboard. The mauler turned too slow, its intelligence limited to primal rage. Jack landed atop its shoulders, fingers digging into the ridges at the back of its neck, and drove his knife into the vent. The mauler convulsed, then collapsed. Silence. Then the arena roared. The Dominion crowd howled, some in amusement, others in what Jack recognized thinly veiled concern. The Overseer stood from its observation platform, considering them. Jack could already see the calculations shifting behind its cold eyes. Interesting, it murmured. Jack wiped mauler blood from his blade. Told you. We're predators. The Overseer smiled, a slow, unsettling expression. Then let us see how far your kind can evolve. The next gate opened. Something larger stirred in the darkness beyond. Jack's grip on his knife tightened. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The mauler's corpse hadn't even cooled before the next door opened. A deeper, guttural growl rumbled from within, resonating through the blood-stained arena. Jack could smell the rancid stench of whatever was coming. The Dominion weren't giving them time to recover. They wanted to see if humanity could adapt under pressure. Jack wiped his knife against his torn sleeve, blood smearing across the fabric. His team was already moving. Grizzly rolled his shoulders, shaking out the last hit he had taken. Hawkeye scanned their surroundings, his sharp gaze tracing potential escape routes, weapons, anything. Tech was crouched over the mauler's body, fingers prying apart the thick armor plates. They're testing endurance, Hawkeye muttered, eyes never leaving the approaching darkness. Jack nodded. They won't stop until we break. A second predator emerged. It was sleek where the mauler had been brute force, its elongated body covered in iridescent chitin. Twin tails lashed behind it, each tipped with a needle-like barb that dripped something viscous. It moved low, calculating, its 6 crimson eyes scanning them with something terrifyingly close to intelligence. Grizzly exhaled. Well, that's new. The creature struck first. A blur of motion. Jack barely had time to throw himself sideways as one of the tails snapped toward him like a whip. He hit the sand, rolled, and came up just as Grizzly intercepted the next strike. His thick arms crossed in a defensive stance. The impact forced him back a step, but he held. Too fast, Hawkeye snapped, moving to flank. We need to box it in. Tech, still crouched over the mauler's body, let out a sudden breath. Got something? Jack risked a glance. Tech had ripped free a jagged section of the mauler's natural armor, the edges sharp where its exoskeleton had cracked. Shields, Tech said. Not perfect, but better than bare hands. Grizzly caught one that was tossed his way, testing the weight before raising it defensively. Hawkeye strapped his to his forearm. Jack took a smaller piece, gripping it tight. A makeshift defense, but one they hadn't had before. The creature circled, its alien mind processing the shift. Its eyes narrowed. Jack smirked. Now you're thinking. It lunged. This time, they were ready. Grizzly took the brunt of the attack, raising his shield just as one tail lashed toward his chest. The barbed tip scraped harmlessly against the mauler's armor plating. The creature recoiled, confused, and that hesitation was all Hawkeye needed. He darted in, slashing at the beast's exposed flank with the jagged edge of his shield. A screech echoed as thick green ichor spilled across the sand. It retreated, snarling. Jack didn't let it recover. He closed the distance, driving his shoulder into its torso, forcing it back toward the arena wall. It thrashed, but the confined space limited its movement. Tech moved next, skidding to a stop and jamming his shield between 2 of its back legs. The creature stumbled. That was all Grizzly needed. He raised his shield high, then drove it down, the jagged edge cutting through the exposed section of its neck. The beast spasmed, limbs twitching, tails curling inward. Then it collapsed still. For a moment, none of them moved. Their breath came in short, controlled bursts. Blood, human and alien, dripped onto the sand. The crowd roared again. But this time, it wasn't just amusement. There was something else in their alien howls. Unease. Jack looked up toward the Overseer's platform. The Dominion scientist stood with its hands clasped, studying them like a puzzle that refused to fit together. The elite warriors of the Empire had seen creatures win before, but not like this. Not with tactics. Not with adaptation. Jack spat into the sand. Getting nervous. The overseer tilted its head. Curious. The ground shuddered. A new section of the arena floor slid open, revealing a recessed chamber. Within it, rows of weapons gleamed under artificial light. Blades, staves, energy weapons unlike anything Jack had ever seen. The overseer gestured. A reward. Take your pick. A test. Jack knew it. They weren't giving them weapons out of kindness. They wanted to see what the humans would do with them. Jack turned to his team. Thoughts. Tech wiped sweat from his brow, gaze flicking over the weapons. If they think giving us tools will make things easier, they haven't been paying attention. Jack grinned. Agreed. Grizzly cracked his knuckles. Let's teach these bastards how real predators hunt. They stepped forward. The Dominion watched. The experiment was far from over. Jack gripped the stolen Dominion weapon, feeling the hum of energy thrumming beneath his fingertips. It was lighter than it looked, the curved edge crackling with plasma, a blade meant for beings far stronger than humans. But strength wasn't what won wars. Intelligence did. Adaptability did. Across the arena, the overseer watched, calculating. Jack could feel the weight of its gaze, the quiet recognition that humanity had done something unexpected. The Dominion had bred warriors for centuries, engineered species with talons that could shred steel and hide that turned away gunfire. But in all their careful curation of apex predators, they had overlooked the deadliest trait of all. Ingenuity. Grizzly spun his own weapon experimentally, testing its balance. Feels good. Hawkeye adjusted the energy bow he had selected, pulling the string back and watching the plasma filament form a taut, glowing arc, better than good. Tech had foregone a weapon entirely, instead prying open a Dominion interface he had scavenged from a fallen guard's armor. His fingers danced over its alien circuitry, eyes narrowed in concentration. Give me 5 minutes, he muttered. I think I can get into their security grid. Jack nodded. They wouldn't get another chance. The Dominion had given them weapons to observe their effectiveness. They didn't expect strategy. The moment the arena doors groaned open, Jack moved. The guards stationed at the exit were fast, their insectoid bodies shifting into defensive stances. But humans were faster. Jack's plasma blade cut through the first warrior before it could raise its rifle, the energy severing chitin and bone alike. Grizzly followed, using sheer brute force to tear the second guard's weapon free and turn it against him. A burst of blue plasma cut the creature down. Hawkeye didn't waste time. The moment the path was clear, he sprinted to higher ground, perching on a ledge where his newfound bow could provide cover fire. Tech crouched low, still working. Almost there. He muttered, Come on. A siren howled through the facility, a throbbing, furious sound that signaled containment breach. Dominion reinforcements would be coming soon. Jack turned, scanning the arena's perimeter. They needed to move. Tech! The hacker let out a breath. Got it. The door slammed open. Beyond them, sterile corridors stretched into the depths of the Dominion facility. Jack didn't hesitate. Move. They ran. Behind them, the Dominion's elite were mobilizing, the overseer's orders echoing through unseen speakers. Jack could hear the thudding march of armored boots, the chittering screeches of war beasts being released from their holding pens. They had minutes, maybe less, before they were overrun. Tech directed them down a side passage, fingers still working at his stolen interface. There's a hangar bay ahead, he called. If we can get there, we might have a shot at stealing a ship. Jack glanced at him. How sure are you? Tech flashed a grin. Let's call it an educated guess. Hawkeye's voice cut in sharp. Contacts incoming. Ahead, the corridor widened into an open bay. Dominion warriors were already waiting. 6 of them, their elongated rifles raised, their armor gleaming beneath the fluorescent lights. Behind them, a towering figure stepped forward, something different from the others. It was larger, its armor heavier, its presence a tangible weight in the air. Unlike the other Dominion soldiers, this one wasn't just another enforcer. It was something more. Jack knew instinctively. This was their real test. The warrior moved first. It closed the distance between them faster than should have been possible. its blade sweeping toward Jack in a blur of motion. He barely had time to parry, the impact sending a shockwave up his arms. The thing was strong, but it wasn't invincible. Jack pivoted, using the Dominion's own momentum against it, sidestepping just enough to let Grizzly crash into its flank with the force of a wrecking ball. The warrior stumbled, just for a second, just long enough for Hawkeye's arrow to streak through the air and pierce the weak point beneath its arm. It roared, but Jack didn't let it recover. He drove his blade into the gap in its armor, twisting as energy crackled, and the warrior collapsed. For a second, everything was still. Then the Dominion soldiers broke. Jack didn't wait to see if more were coming. Go. They sprinted toward the hangar, their path finally clear. The doors loomed ahead, the promise of escape just within reach. And then the overseer's voice echoed through the facility. Impressive. Jack didn't stop running. They weren't free yet. The hangar doors loomed ahead, an expanse of reinforced metal separating them from freedom. Beyond it, rows of Dominion ships sat in tight formation, sleek vessels designed for war and conquest. Jack didn't know how to fly one, but he didn't have to. Tech would figure it out. Behind them, the Dominion were closing in. Jack could hear the synchronized march of boots, the inhuman screeches of war beasts unleashed in pursuit. The overseer wasn't testing them anymore. It was hunting them. Tech skidded to a stop at the control panel beside the hangar entrance, fingers flying over the stolen Dominion interface. It's encrypted, he muttered, jaw tight. Give me 60 seconds. Jack turned to face the corridor they had just emerged from. They didn't have 60 seconds. Grizzly took up position beside him, rolling his massive shoulders. I say we hold the line. Hawkeye was already moving, scaling a stack of supply crates to find higher ground. He knocked an arrow in his plasma bow, the energy filament glowing. I'll cover from above. Make it count. Jack flexed his grip on his stolen blade. We will. The first wave hit fast. Dominion warriors surged through the corridor, their sleek rifles flashing with blue plasma. Jack dropped low, rolling beneath the initial volley. Coming up inside their formation, his blade sang through the air, cutting through the closest soldier before the others could adjust. Grizzly met the charge head-on, ramming into the nearest enemy, using brute strength to tear the weapon from its grasp and turn it against the others. He moved like a wrecking ball, fists and blade carving through alien flesh. Above them, Hawkeye's arrows streaked through the air, each shot precise, each impact felling a Dominion before they could regroup. But the Dominion adapted. The second wave came armored, thicker plating covering their vital points. They moved with ruthless coordination, spreading out, forcing Jack and the others into tighter defensive positions. A plasma bolt grazed Jack's shoulder. He hissed in pain but didn't stop moving. He couldn't stop moving. Tech! Almost there. Tech's voice was tight, filled with barely restrained urgency. He was overriding Dominion security, rewriting the codes in real time, forcing the hangar doors to open. A roar shook the air. Something massive was coming. Jack's stomach turned cold as the Dominion's true enforcer stepped through the smoke-filled corridor. It was twice the size of the warriors they had already faced, its armor layered with reactive plating. Its forearms flexed, each one wielding a different weapon, a plasma sword, a kinetic hammer, a bladed whip, and something that looked disturbingly like a human skull fused to its armor. The overseer's voice echoed through unseen speakers. This is where your evolution ends. The enforcer charged. Jack barely dodged the first strike, the kinetic hammer shattering the floor where he had been standing. Grizzly moved to intercept, but the Dominion warrior was too fast. It pivoted, the bladed whip lashing out and wrapping around Grizzly's arm before yanking him off his feet. Hawkeye loosed an arrow. It pinged off the enforcer's plating, barely leaving a scratch. Jack lunged, blade flashing toward the creature's exposed neck joint. The enforcer blocked without looking, one of its arms intercepting his strike while another lashed toward his ribs. Pain flared through Jack's side. He gasped, barely staying on his feet. This thing was beyond anything they had fought before. Then the hangar doors screeched open. The sudden rush of air hit as the atmospheric shielding engaged, the vast expanse of the Dominion hangar stretching before them. Tech yelled, "Go!" Now! Jack moved. Grizzly ripped free from the whip's grasp, driving a shoulder into the enforcer's midsection, forcing it back just long enough for them to disengage. Hawkeye covered their retreat, loosing 3 rapid shots, forcing the Dominion forces to hesitate. They ran for the closest ship, a sleek fighter-class vessel prepped for immediate launch. It was their only shot. Jack slammed his hand against the control panel. "Tech, get us in the air." Tech vaulted into the pilot's seat, fingers flying over Dominion controls, translating alien symbology in real time. The ship hummed to life beneath them. The overseer's voice returned, colder now. "You will not escape." The hangar's blast doors began to close. Hawkeye fired at the mechanisms, slowing the descent, buying them precious seconds. Grizzly took the co-pilot's seat, yanking at the unfamiliar controls, forcing the ship into motion. The engines roared. Jack turned just in time to see the Enforcer leap, its massive frame hurtling toward them, its blade raised to cleave the cockpit in half. Jack grabbed the plasma cannon mounted on the ship's hull, fired point blank. The Enforcer's body was engulfed in raw energy, the impact hurling it backward, its armor peeling away in molten slag. It hit the ground, unmoving. The ship launched. The Dominion fleet scrambled behind them, ships moving to intercept. But Tech had already plotted a course. The stolen vessel punched through the atmosphere, streaking into the void, engines flaring. Jack exhaled. They had done it. Grizzly let out a rough chuckle. "Told you we'd make it." Hawkeye leaned back. "Never had a doubt." Tech smirked. "You should. I have no idea how to land this thing." Jack just smiled. They'd figure it out. They always did.